Hey, Slippery Rock Alliance friends and family, I hope that you're doing well today. I'm coming at you with another devotion from James 3. In James, we were talking about how salvation is through faith alone, but living faith is lived out by doing good works. And one of the things we talked about earlier in James is that true or genuine religion leads to a bridled tongue, because Jesus said, out of the heart, the mouth speaks. So what we learn is that the bridling of the tongue, self-control over the things we say, is evidence of a transformed heart. Which leads me to ask this question: how do our words affect our spiritual lives? And when we look at this, we're going to be looking at James 3, 1-5, and he will answer this question for us. So let's look at it together, starting in verse 1. Not many of you should become teachers, my brothers, for you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. When I was first preparing to enter into the ministry, I sat back and I asked the question, is there anything else I can do outside of ministry that will satisfy me? And in that moment, my mind was empty. I could not think of anything, and I realized that I was called to be a leader in the church. But James here is saying that we need to be careful wanting to be a leader, because those who are put into leadership positions in the church will be judged by God with greater scrutiny, because we are given power through our words and our language. We have the power to do damage or to hurt another person or to lead them astray. We also have the power to build somebody up and speak the words of life and make a difference for the sake of the kingdom. And so he uses the example of leadership here as a catalyst for a conversation about how we ought to be in control of the things that we say. So what I learn here is that good leaders choose their words wisely. And that leads us into verse 2, where he says, "For we all stumble in many ways. And if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able to bridle his whole body." As he's speaking here, he reminds us, look, we all stumble. We all face sin battles that we struggle with. But the man who does not stumble with the things that he says, the one who is in control of his tongue, this is like a perfect man who has bridled or is in control of his whole body. You see, the Bible teaches us that if we are being spiritually transformed and keeping in step with the Holy Spirit in Galatians, that we are being filled with the fruit of the Spirit. One of the fruit of the Spirit is self-control. So the man who is in control of his tongue also has control over the other areas of his life, because the Holy Spirit is empowering us to be filled with the fruit of the Spirit. And what I learn here is that control of the tongue is evidence for spiritual maturity. Spiritual maturity is very simple. The one who is becoming spiritually mature is the one who is being filled with the fruit of the Spirit, one of them being self-control. And he goes on and he gives us some illustrations in verses 3 through the end of verse 5. And he says this, he says, "If we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we guide their whole bodies as well. Look at the ships also. Though they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs. So also the tongue is a small member, yet it boasts of great things." There are two things that we need to understand here. The first thing is that the tongue is a very small member of our body. However, the tongue has significant power to steer the course of our lives. In the same way that the bridle is in control of the whole horse, or the rudder is in control of the whole ship. However, those who have bridled their tongues, they have gained control of their tongue, and they are in control of the ship through the power of the Holy Spirit. And so we need to understand that every word counts. In Matthew 12:36, Jesus tells us that one day we will stand before God and we will give account for every careless word. Your language matters because it is a reflection of what is happening in your heart, and because your language has power to do damage or to give life. And so there are a few ways that I would encourage us. The first way I would challenge us to live is to speak clearly. The second way I would challenge us is to speak carefully. And the third way I would challenge us is to speak the words of life. Because our language is important. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and give it a like down below. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys are having a great week, and we will see you later. Take care.